Welcome to the second segment of our interview series, Perspectives of a Professional. If you haven't seen the first episode, check it out on our Facebook and LinkedIn pages. On this segment, we'll be continuing our conversation with Scott Heil of To Be Sure Substance Abuse Professionals, where he will talk about the role of the substance abuse professional within Canadian organizations.
So I noticed when you were talking about your credentials that you had brought up, U.S. Department of Transportation, and you talked about DOT a bit. Now, in my understanding, DOT, only applies in Canada to a really small group of employers and employees who are actually in the transportation industry crossing the U.S. border. So how does SAP actually apply in Canada and within non-DOT companies?
Yeah, so that's a good point. So, and it's good for folks to know that, there's lots of qualified DOT SAPs in the States, obviously, and far fewer in Canada. But I think a lot of, keen safety sensitive employers are catching on and using some of these services because they know the quality of it, and they can get a lot more detailed information rather than kind of being left in the dark and kind of wondering, encountering barriers or hurdles into a kind of effectively guiding their work going forward with employees that might be struggling or not compliant in these areas. So, so the whole safety-centered versus employee-centered thing is definitely at play, but I do think things are slowly starting to change these ways, and employers are becoming more aware of what options are out there that can meet their needs well.
Absolutely. So does the process change, or is there any difference, I guess, for when you do an assessment or you're supporting DOT companies versus, working with non-DOT employers?
Yeah, for sure. So DOT is, they don't piss around. They're pretty detailed processes, lots of requirements, because the whole function is to protect the safety of the traveling public.
Absolutely.
And so this can make, for people like you and me and the general public, we can, it is a bit of a relief to know that there is something out there that is in place to protect that. So, when we're going on a trip or just traveling, I went on a trip to Kansas City with my dad a while back, and with all the semis on the highway, it's good to know that there are things in place and regulations to separate substances from the workplace. DOT is more detailed. There's more to the assessments, and there's a post-treatment assessment as well. But SAPs, when an employer in a non-DOT company in Canada, we can kind of adapt our services, or they can use SAP services in kind of a less detailed way to meet their needs as well. So
awesome. All right. So I guess, a big question that our viewers might be wondering about is substance use disorder really a concern in Canada? Like what are we seeing within the Canadian environment?
Yeah. So, oftentimes we hear this stuff on the news, right? And, but for an example, the Canadian Center on Substance Use and Addiction, what they estimated was that roughly 13% of Canadians in general would meet criteria for substance use disorder.
Wow.
And keep in mind, so that's pre-COVID days.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I know for myself and kind of what I see with people, how COVID's kind of thrown off their routines, juggling different things. And, what we know with COVID, obviously, mental health is up, substance use is up. So there's I would imagine there'll be some impact to some of those statistics as well. Some of the things in the news as well, you may hear of, overdoses are up dramatically, suicides that are related to substance use as well. And in Saskatchewan here, that's already on top of some of our pre-existing issues. Unless you've been living under a rock, that Saskatchewan is actually a national leader in impaired driving, domestic violence, crime severity index, and all of it kind of related to substances and crime. So it is a big deal, and we do need all hands on deck in these areas. For employers, though, what they can do is be a little bit more proactive. So intervening earlier, nipping some of these things in the bud so you can keep people working, keep people healthy, keep people at work, and avoid injuries and accidents and kind of long-term consequences from substance use. So.
Absolutely. So I think, as you mentioned, intervening earlier, I think it's really key for employers to be utilizing programs like, super reasonable cause supervisor training programs and things like that, so that those boots on the ground supervisors that are dealing with workers day in and day out can, effectively recognize when an employee may not be fit for work or may be having some issues, and then knowing how to properly support them.
Thanks again to Scott for another informative session. Stay tuned for episode 3 in our interview series, where we will again speak with Scott and learn about what an SAP assessment consists of and the benefits to you as an employer.